The sound of the slap didn't just sting my face. It cracked through the silence of the Emirates first-class lounge like a gunshot. For a second, the clinking of silverware stopped. The quiet hum of business conversations died. Everyone looked at us. My sister, Chloe, stood there, her hand still hovering in the air, her chest heaving in her designer crop top. She didn't look sorry. She looked annoyed. She hissed at me, her voice dripping with that familiar poisoneux antiquement, saying I was ruining the aesthetic. All because I wouldn't switch my window seat so she could film her intro. She actually hit me. In public? Because I was messing up her lighting. Before I tell you what I did next, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't scream. I didn't grab her wrist. I didn't look at my parents, who were already rushing over not to check on me, but to hush the room, to smooth things over, to protect the image. My cheek burned, radiating a heat that felt distinct and separate from the rest of my body. But inside, the temperature had dropped to absolute zero. I felt a sudden, terrifying clarity. I picked up my glass of champagne, took a slow sip, and turned my back on them. I walked calmly toward the panoramic window, overlooking the tarmac, finding a secluded leather armchair in the corner. My hands weren't shaking. That was the strange part. Usually, confrontation made me tremble, made me stutter, made me desperate to fix things. But this wasn't a confrontation. This was a conclusion. I placed the crystal flute on the side table and pulled out my phone. I didn't open Instagram. I didn't open my messages to beg for an apology. I opened the American Express Platinum app. I logged in. Face ID verified. Welcome back, Hannah. The balance stared back at me. A number that represented years of my hard work. My late nights. My code. My stress. And right at the top of the recent transactions list were the pending charges for this trip. The trip I had planned. The trip I had paid for. The trip that was supposed to be a nice family getaway but had morphed into a content creation boot camp for Chloe. I tapped on the transaction for Emirates Airlines. Flight EK203. 4 first-class suites. The confirmation number seemed to mock me. I looked at the total. $16,200. It's funny how much power sits in a simple digital button. It was just a small, blue link that said Manage Booking. I clicked it. I selected the passengers. Chloe, Robert, Susan. Select all. Then I unchecked my own name. I stared at the 3 names left highlighted. My family. My blood. The people who had just watched me get assaulted and were currently whispering urgently to each other across the lounge, probably planning how to spin this. How to blame me for provoking her. I hit cancel flight. The app asked me if I was sure. It warned me that this action was irreversible. It reminded me of the cancellation policy. I didn't hesitate. I didn't feel a pang of guilt. I felt the cold, clinical satisfaction of an accountant correcting a ledger error. Confirm. Processing. Done. $16,000. Refunded to the original form of payment. I went back to the main menu. Next up, the St. Tam, Regis, Bora, Bora. 2 overwater bungalows with the mountain view. The ones Chloe had specifically demanded, because they were iconic. $10,500 for 5 nights. I clicked Modify Reservation. I changed the number of rooms from 2 to 1. I removed the guests. I kept the reservation under my name only. The app recalculated the total. The refund amount flashed on the screen. Confirm. Done. I wasn't finished. I found the concierge service, booking. The private boat transfer from the airport. The one with the champagne service upon arrival. The couple's spa package my parents had hinted they wanted. Another $2,500. Cancel. Cancel. My thumb moved with a rhythm. A steady beat of destruction. Delete. Refund. Erase. In less than 3 minutes. I had dismantled a $28,000 vacation. I had stripped away the luxury, the status, the comfort, and the very means of transportation for 3 people. And I had done it without saying a word. I watched the refund processed notifications stack up on my lock screen like little trophies. They were frantic over there, huddled on the designer sofas, probably worried about their boarding passes or the Wi-Fi signal. They had no idea that the ground beneath them had already vanished. They were standing on air, held up only by an assumption, the assumption that I would always be there to pay the bill. I took another sip of champagne. It tasted crisp, expensive, and for the first time in my life, it tasted entirely mine. While the little loading wheel spun on my screen, confirming the final cancellation, I let myself look at them one last time. Really look at them. My father, Robert, was rubbing Chloe's back, murmuring something soothing. My mother, Susan, was digging through her purse, likely looking for a Xanax to calm Chloe's nerves. They looked like a portrait of a loving family in crisis. And I was the invisible painter who had supplied the canvas and the oils. I thought about the last 10 years. It wasn't just this trip. It was the rent for Chloe's first apartment in the city because she couldn't create in a basement. It was the lease on her Range Rover because image is everything in this industry. It was the medical bills for Dad's stress. The renovations on Mom's kitchen. Every time I pulled out my card, they told me I was the successful one, the strong one. They told me it was my duty because I had the tech money, and Chloe was still finding her path. I realized then what I had been to them. I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't a sister. I was a utility. There is a term in psychology I read about once. Late at night, when I was trying to understand why I felt so lonely, in a house full of people. The glass child. It usually refers to the healthy sibling of a child who is sick or has high needs. The parents are so consumed by the fragile child's care that they look right through the healthy one. The healthy child is expected to be transparent, to make no noise, to have no needs, and to be sturdy enough to withstand anything without shattering. Chloe wasn't sick. She didn't have a disability. But her ego was so fragile. Her need for validation, so consuming, that she had become the high-needs child of our family. She sucked up every ounce of oxygen in the room. If Chloe was sad, the whole house had to mourn. If Chloe was happy, we all had to celebrate. If Chloe was angry, we all had to apologize. And me, I was the glass. I was the window they looked through to see their golden child. I was the structure that held the house up. Invisible and unacknowledged until there was a crack. They assumed that because I was quiet, I didn't feel. They assumed that because I was successful, I didn't need support. They assumed that because I was strong, I could be slapped across the face in an airport lounge, and I would just take it. Because that's what glass does. It stays put. It protects. But they forgot one thing about glass. When you hit it hard enough, it doesn't just bend. It doesn't bruise. It shatters. And when it shatters, it becomes dangerous. It becomes a million jagged edges that will cut anything that tries to hold on to it. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. I didn't look like a sister anymore. I didn't look like a daughter. I looked like a stranger. I looked like someone who had just woken up from a 29-year coma. The transaction history on my screen wasn't just money. It was a record of my servitude. It was a ledger of every time I had bought their love and received nothing but a receipt in return. I saw Mom look over at me. She waved her hand dismissively. A gesture that meant, get over here and fix this. She expected me to walk back over there, apologize to Chloe for upsetting her, and maybe upgrade her seat to smooth things over. She expected the glass to be intact. She had no idea she was waving at a pile of shards. I stood up. I smoothed the front of my blazer. I didn't feel the weight of the obligation anymore. I felt light. I felt dangerous. I walked back toward them. Not to apologize, but to watch the realization hit them. I wanted to see their faces when they tried to step onto a plane that didn't have a seat for them. I wanted to see them try to open a door that I had locked. I wasn't their bank anymore. I wasn't their safety net. I was just the person who paid for the tickets. And I was the person who had just canceled them. I walked back to the seating area, my heels clicking rhythmically against the polished floor. As I got closer, I saw the setup. Chloe had propped her phone up against a vase of orchids on the table, the ring light case casting a harsh, artificial glow on her tear-stained face. She was live. Of course she was live. She was leaning into the camera, wiping away a tear that looked suspiciously well-timed. Speaking in that breathy, victimized voice she reserved for her 50,000 followers. I just don't understand why people have to bring such negative energy to a blessing, she whispered to the screen, glancing up at me as I approached to make sure I heard. We're supposed to be going to paradise. And my own sister is trying to ruin the aesthetic before we even take off. I'm literally shaking. You guys. She saw me standing there and dramatically recoiled, pulling her legs up onto the sofa like I was a predator. She's back, she mouthed to the camera, playing the terrified angel to perfection. My father, Robert, looked up from his iPad. He didn't see a daughter who had just been slapped. He saw a production manager who was failing to keep the talent happy. He stood up, his face set in a tight frown, and stepped between me and Chloe, blocking my path. Fix this, Hannah, he said, his voice low and sharp. It wasn't a request. It was an order. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Fix what? Dad, the fact that your daughter just physically assaulted me in an international airport. Lower your voice, he hissed, glancing around to see if anyone important was watching. She's under a lot of pressure. You know how sensitive she is. She wants the window seat for her intro video. Just give it to her. Why do you have to be so difficult? You can switch back after takeoff. It's just a seat. Hannah, my mother, Susan, chimed in, not even looking up from her purse as she handed Chloe a bottle of water. You're the older sister. Be the bigger person. You know this trip is work for her. She needs the content. There it was. The family motto. Be the bigger person. Translation. Let us crush you into the dirt so we don't have to deal with Chloe's tantrum. They were gaslighting me in real time, rewriting the reality of violence into a story about my selfishness. They didn't care about the slap. They didn't care about the humiliation. They only cared that the ATM was malfunctioning. I'm not switching seats, I said. My voice was calm, flat, devoid of the pleading tone I used to use. And I'm not apologizing. Chloe let out a gasp that was purely for the benefit of the live stream. See? She cried out, pointing the phone at me. This is what I deal with. She knows how important this is for my brand deals. Tarte is expecting the first-class footage if I don't post the suite tour. I could lose the contract. I laughed. It was a dry, cold sound that made my mother freeze. I stepped around my father, so I was standing directly in front of Chloe and her phone. There is no contract. Chloe, I said. The comments section on her screen must have been flying by. But Chloe froze. What are you talking about? Stop lying to make me look bad. You've been telling Mom and Dad and all these people watching that this trip is sponsored. That Tarte and Revolve and the St. Regis are paying for us to be here. I looked directly into the camera lens. But they aren't. I am. Hannah. Stop it. Mom snapped, finally looking alarmed. This is family business. No. I continued, my eyes locked on Chloe. I paid $16,000 for these tickets. I paid $10,000 for the bungalows. I paid for the clothes you're wearing, the phone you're holding, and the brand deal car you drove to the airport. There is no sponsor. Chloe. I am the sponsor. I have been the sponsor for 10 years. Silence slammed into the group. Chloe's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She scrambled to end the live stream, her fingers fumbling over the screen, ending the broadcast before the truth could do any more damage to her carefully curated fiction. You bitch, she whispered, the facade of the victim dropping instantly to reveal the snarling entitlement underneath. You just embarrassed me in front of 50,000 people. Alex. That was unnecessary, Dad said, his face turning a shade of red that usually preceded a lecture on loyalty. We are a family. Money shouldn't matter between us. You have plenty of it. And helping your sister is what family does. You don't hold it over her head. Yeah. Chloe snared, regaining her confidence now that Dad was defending her. You think just because you're a boring coder, you can control me, you owe me this trip. You know how hard I work? I looked at the three of them. The entitlement was so thick, it was almost suffocating. They truly believed that my resources were their birthright. They believed that my role on this earth was to silently fund their dreams while they treated me like an accessory. You're right, Dad, I said quietly. I did assume that helping family was a duty. But I made a mistake. I stepped closer, making sure they could hear every syllable. You assumed my love was a renewable resource? You thought you could dig and burn it for fuel? And it would just regenerate overnight, because I'm strong, and I'm loyal. But love isn't a natural resource. Dad. It's not sunlight. It's a subscription service. My mother blinked, confused by the metaphor. Hannah, you're making no sense. It makes perfect sense, I said. You have been subscribed to the Hannah Pays for Everything package for a decade. It includes rent, cars, bailouts, and luxury vacations. But the terms of service are simple, basic respect. You don't hit the provider. You don't humiliate the provider. And you certainly don't gaslight the provider when she's standing there with a stinging cheek. I checked my watch. 12 minutes had passed since I hit the button. As of 12 minutes ago, I said, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Your payment method was declined. The subscription is cancelled. Access denied. Stop being dramatic. Chloe rolled her eyes, reaching for her bag. I'm going to the gate. I can't be around your toxic energy anymore. Come on. Mom. She stood up, flipping her hair over her shoulder, expecting the world to part for her like it always did. She expected to walk onto that plane, drink the champagne I paid for, and sleep in the bed I booked. She took one step toward the exit, and that's when I saw them. The Emirates concierge, a tall, impeccably dressed woman with a tablet, was walking toward us. She wasn't smiling, and she was flanked by two large men in dark blazers with security earpieces. Chloe smirked, seeing them approach. She pointed a manicured finger at me. Good, she said to Mom. Security is here. Finally. Someone is going to kick her out for causing a scene. I didn't say a word. I just folded my arms and waited for the guillotine to drop. The concierge didn't stop at me. She didn't even look at me. She walked straight past my shoulder, her heels muted on the plush carpet, and stopped directly in front of my father. The two security officers flanked her, their presence silent but heavy, creating a sudden, undeniable wall between my family and the rest of the lounge. Chloe's smirk faltered. She lowered her phone slightly, the ring light reflecting in her confused eyes. Wait, she said. She's over there. Why are you talking to my dad? The concierge ignored her. She looked at my father with a polite, professional expression that was far more terrifying than anger. Mr. Robert? She asked, though it wasn't really a question. Yes, my dad said, puffing out his chest a little, assuming this was some VIP service upgrade. Is there a problem with the flight? There is a problem with your access. See ya, the concierge said. Her voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of voice that delivered bad news to rich people for a living. I'm afraid your tickets have been voided by the purchaser. You no longer have valid boarding passes for flight EK203 to Dubai. Dad blinked. Voided. What do you mean voided? We checked in an hour ago. The reservation was cancelled approximately 12 minutes ago, she continued, her eyes flicking briefly to the tablet in her hand. As you are no longer ticketed passengers, you do not have access to this lounge. We must ask you to vacate the premises immediately. The concierge didn't need to answer. Everyone slowly turned to me. Dad's voice shook with anger. Hannah. What did you do? Payment declined, I said. Chloe shrieked when she realized I had cancelled their tickets, trying to film through the meltdown. But security stepped in. My parents insisted it was illegal, but the concierge calmly reminded them they were trespassing and would be removed. People in the lounge stared and filmed, while my mother begged me to fix everything. Dad demanded it. I refused. When my flight was called, I picked up my bag. Chloe screamed about her followers and her luggage, but I simply told her the subway could take them home. Security escorted them out as I walked to my gate. Boarding first class. I felt silence for the first time in my life, and it felt like freedom. I flew to Bora Bora, checked into my overwater bungalow, and ignored hundreds of messages, threats, and insults from my family. I remembered the concept of dopamine detox. My brain was addicted to their chaos. Peace felt strange, only because it was healthy. So I typed one final message in the group chat. The bank is closed. Then I blocked them all, standing in the turquoise water, floating alone under the sun. I finally understood what choosing myself felt like.